Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We've got a very special video for you. As you can see, we have a very special guest on. It is the legend himself, John from Hot Take Hockey. We're going to be talking some Toronto Maple Leafs with you, of course, as we get ready for the start of the 2021-2022 season. But John, thank you so much for taking the time to do this video today, and really excited to have you on and talk some Leafs.
Hey, John, I appreciate you having me on, and it's always good to get the collab going. And yeah, for the Leafs, I think I'm a little bit more ready to talk about them and just yeah, what's up? So let's chat Leafs.
Yeah, all right. So there's a few questions I wanted to get into, but I guess one of with the offseason just kind of winding down here and us heading into the obviously start of training camp and the season coming up. What are your overall thoughts just on the Leafs offseason and the changes that they've made this offseason and what they've done?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just okay. I'm fine with it. I think that's what the words I've been usually using with people is just I'm not ecstatic about the moves. I'm not pissed about the moves. I think some of the moves they made in some aspects improve the team or at least fill in some holes. They really didn't get better because at the very least on paper, you're losing Hyman, who was a big part of the top six. And regardless of like cap hit or whatever you want to look at, it's still a big part of the top six. Freddie was still, in my eyes, a decent part, and we'll see what Mrazek brings. And then at the end of the day, you just brought in question marks. And I know for you can definitely give some insight on a couple of the question marks in Richie and Kasha, but at the end of the day, they didn't bring anyone that's going to, I'd say, turn heads day one. They brought guys that potentially could be a good story and potentially could fill some holes. But my mindset on it is just Kyle Dubas did nothing risky. And he's putting, even if it's like blind faith, he put his whole faith in the core. And I mean, this is probably the last year. And if it doesn't work out, he's going down with them. So.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I thought that I looked at what they did and nothing jumped out to them getting better anywhere. They just kind of put some pieces in place, but it wasn't a vast improvement in any area of the game. Yeah. I can tell you, Nick Ritchie had a solid year last year. He had 15 goals, and he obviously brings some physicality and size to the lineup. Kasha, I mean, he played like 2 games last season. He's got an extensive concussion history. It's like, if he's healthy, he might be able to add something and maybe like a third line role. But beyond that, I wouldn't expect too much from Kasha. His health has become a big problem, especially for someone who's still as young as he is.
Yeah. And I know some Bruins fans were telling me they were getting really frustrated with 2 things with Richie, which is one being how slow he was. And I could see that he's so slow, but also just like his penalty taking. So I think that was the 2 things with Richie. I was even seeing when I was watching the games was just on transition. The guy is so slow and you can just blow by him so easily. And just as long as you don't make contact with him, because you'll get rocked. But if you get around him, it's easy money. And then just the penalties, because that's one thing I don't want to see costly penalties taken. But at the same time, he does get the Leafs lineup a little bit more physical. So.
Yeah, well, you'll have to see how it goes with him. He does take some really dumb penalties, but at the same time, if you park him in front of the net, he can be pretty useful in that area.
Oh, he could be huge for the power play. That's one thing that Simmons, again, he's been a net front presence guy on the power play in the past, and with the Flyers, he was really successful in that. But I think Richie, you put that frame in front, like many goalies, it's already hard enough to stop a Matthews shot. So we'll see what happens there.
Definitely. So with the season coming up, obviously it's a fresh start. It's a new year. Everyone starts 0-0-0 and everyone starts, completely fresh and with their new rosters and whatnot. And everybody knows what happened again last year in the playoffs. It's not news to anybody. We don't even need to go there. I just want to know, like, what are the expectations for the Leafs this year? Like, what are fans, the team, just everyone around Toronto expecting from this team? How far do you really want to see them go?
Because I think that's so tough, because I think like Leaf fans are all over the place with this. And specifically with me, I think over the last couple of years, I just wanted some kind of progression. Obviously, as a fan, you're going to be pissed regardless if your team gets eliminated. But in the back of your head, or at least in the recovery process of a loss like that, a week after or a couple weeks or a month after, you can be like, okay, this team, they went another round past, or they went 2 more rounds than they did the previous year. So at least you could see that progression. The Leafs, it's just not that. Since 2017, this team has just been a first round exit. And yes, in that 2017 year, they were not even expected to make the playoffs. They squeaked in as a second wildcard team. 2018, the Bruins were the better team, and they still forced the Bruins back to a game 7. And then 2019, the Leafs, that was the year where I can say that the Leafs in probably 5 of those 7 games, or at least 4 of those 7 games, they were the better team. They probably should have won that 2019 series. So that and I've been saying to people, since 2019, that's been the expectation for the Leafs to do something. 2017 and 2018 was just getting your feet wet.
Yep.
And that was the first 2 years of first round losses. There's been now 3. Yes, the Blue Jackets one was a play-in series, but the last 3, those have been the disappointments, primarily the Blue Jackets and Montreal series. So my expectation at the very least is go a couple of rounds, show that the big guys can play. Obviously, for a lot of Leaf fans, it's cup or bust at this point because you've gone through so much bullshit over the last few years. But I would say specifically, it's at least a couple rounds for me.
Okay, yeah, and that would transition right into my next question as to like what constitutes a successful season for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year? Is it really just getting past that hump in the playoffs and finally winning a couple of rounds and starting to show some signs of moving forward in the playoffs?
Well, yeah, I'll say 2 things on that. One, you see it with teams in the past. Sometimes there's just like that one barrier, or just like that one kind of obstacle that once that team gets through it, I mean, look at Washington, all those losses against Pittsburgh. And once they finally beat Pittsburgh, they went all the way and won. So I'm not saying the Leafs are finally going to get past the first round and go all the way to win the cup. Who knows? Maybe they do. Maybe they find the momentum and just go on a crazy run after that first round win. But what I am saying is that this has been an obstacle, and it's just a mind game for so long here that I think – that's a massive problem. And once they do, I think it's going to be kind of like, okay, are the big boys stepping up? Like, obviously for myself, the biggest thing has been Mitch Marner. This guy just doesn't perform in the playoffs, at least since 2019. So that's the 3 years the Leafs have kind of been in this window. So yeah, I would say the big boys stepping up, because that's been the biggest thing, not the defense. People talk about all this time, John, the Leafs defense are still not good. They're still not good. They have done nothing that to me has been like, maybe since the Marincin and Gardner days in the playoffs, but since then, the Leafs defense has been fine. It's been scoring. In game 5 against Columbus, they don't score. In game 7 against Montreal, they score 1 goal with a minute left in the game. That didn't matter. Nylander scores a garbage goal. 2 elimination games like that, the Leafs scored 1 combined goal and 2. So it's the big boy stepping up the offense. And then for me as well, I want to see guys like coming into the picture, like Robertson, like Sandy, and like Liljegren, guys like that. So I think that's been the biggest thing. The Leafs have cap issues, but if they can bring some of those guys that are on entry-level deals and be successful over these next couple of years, then that can work.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point about the Leafs defense, because I was always one of those people that was always harping on the Leafs D as that being a big problem and holding the team back. But when you really delve into it, I would say, especially the past 2 seasons, the Leafs D has actually been good. They've been a good defensive team for the past 2 seasons. And obviously that wasn't the one thing holding them back, because they still haven't been able to take that next step. So I don't think that the Leafs D can be kind of pointed at and laughed at anymore, that they're actually a pretty good defensive team.
Oh, definitely now. And I would say in 2020 against like that season going into Columbus, they were definitely not like, especially before all the COVID stuff happened, they were not, I mean, they lost to a Zamboni driver, a bunch of that stuff happened. So the defense at that point, like early, like 2019-ish, 2020, it wasn't great, but it definitely was not the problem in that Columbus series. And then obviously over the last year, especially since they've gotten TJ Brody, defense has not been an issue.
Yeah, definitely. So next up, what kind of pressure is this team under to really perform this year and finally win in the playoffs and take that next step? I feel like, and I'm not from the area, obviously, but as just watching from the outside, I've got to imagine that it is like a powder keg up there, like just waiting to explode. Like this team has to finally do something, or like heads are going to start rolling.
Yeah, there's massive pressure. I think there's a couple things that a lot of Leaf fans are looking at, but there's also a lot of things that Leaf fans are just not interested in anymore. I mean, I've talked to a lot of Leaf fans, and then you see it on Twitter. they're just not interested in following the Leafs during the season as they've used to. Like I'm still going to follow them, and I have the channel and I'm still going to do a lot of stuff with the Leafs. But the thing is, there's some Leaf fans that, like, my dad hasn't even seen a Stanley Cup since he's been alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just some Leaf fans, they're just so tired of the same thing over and over again that they don't want to invest themselves in an 82-game season just to see them out in 7 games or out in 6 games in the first round again.
Yeah.
Especially with a skilled team like this. It would be different if this team was just like mediocre, didn't have the skill, and they just didn't perform. That's just one thing. Like the Leafs have done that in the past where like in 2013, they had the Kessel line or whatever, but they didn't have an Austin Matthews, a Mitch Marner, a John Tavares. They didn't have these big guys. So that's the mindset. The pressure is massive. And that's where I'm also going to try to appreciate this season, because this might be Morgan Riley's last season as a Leaf. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. So even for Riley, like the pressure is massive. You have this last season for Riley. You have like 3 years left on the contract for Matthews and Nylander, and then 4 left for Tavares and Marner. Like the window is shrinking really fast. So this year, especially considering Riley's been here since day one of this new team, like he was drafted 2012. He made his debut in 2014 after the collapse. He's been the guy since day one. Riley's the longest tenured Leaf. If he's done after this year and they collapse, I would imagine this team's getting blown up. Like Matthews stays, and I would imagine Tavares stays, but I've been saying this for a couple of years, John, that I think if they collapse, the team's going to get blown up, and it still hasn't happened. Dubas, but I think the sense is, they use the word like the phrase last dance. The Leafs haven't done anything to say last dance, but with this core, it's the last dance.
Yeah. And that was going to bring me into my final question was, say the Leafs, make the playoffs, but get knocked out in the first round in 6 games, or God forbid, don't even make the playoffs. And, Florida has a great year. Montreal has another wildly good season that no one saw coming. And all of a sudden the Leafs find themselves not even in the postseason. Like, what kind of changes could we expect if the Leafs don't take that next step this year, if they're another first round exit? Like, are we looking at like major organizational changes from the top down? Are we looking at player changes, GM change, coaching, or all of the above potentially if things don't go well this year?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at this here. So Marner's no movement clause sets in for 2023, the summer. So I'm also just thinking like that's another mindset for the Leafs, right? If they choke this year, next year would be the window to trade Marner without any restrictions. So that would be something, because I think if it doesn't go well this year, I think a lot of guys are going down with the ship. Like I think Shanahan's probably done.
Yep.
I think Dubas is potential. Here's the thing with Dubas. Outside of 2 moves for me, outside of the Kadri trade, but that was so hard to predict and so hard to manage because Kadri got suspended back-to-back playoffs. Like, name me a scenario where that's happened with a player and a team. He literally got suspended back-to-back playoffs against the same team. So, like, it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So that trade was a mistake. And then the Foligno trade, it looks really bad now. You traded a first-round pick for a guy that played only a few games and it just didn't work out. So my thing with Dubas is he's done a lot of great things for this team. I don't blame him, because a lot of people will say Dubas this, Dubas worst GM ever. Bro, he's built a team here. Yes, the Marner contract was bad, but it was $2 million bad. And a lot of people tell me this, and I give Marner crap, but the cap was supposed to go up significantly over these 2 years, if not for COVID, right? So that $2 million wouldn't have mattered. Yes, it would look a lot better if Marner was at a $9 million per. But people saying like it's like a significant like gap. No, it would be a 2 million space. So I think, Shanahan would be done, potentially Dubas. And if they got out of the first round, John, again, it would be Keefe gone. And it would be, I would say, 2 significant players gone, and probably Riley going to a different team.
All right. Yeah. You got to imagine that this has got to be like one of those do or die years for the Toronto Maple Leafs, where
100%.
It's just like, you've got to finally take that next step. You've got to make some sort of run, or it's going to be time for some wholesale changes where they've got to try a different approach at this point. Cause it's been a number of years now. Like you said, 17, they weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs, and they had a really good year as a young team that year. 18 was like that first, like, okay, we're trying to figure out playoff hockey here. And then 2019, they played well in 20. I remember watching obviously every game of that series, and they played well in 2019. And that was a really close series from
Yeah,
start to
man.
finish.
My buddy, who's a Bruins fan, texted me after Game 5 when the Leafs won
Yep.
in Boston and thought the series was over. And every Bruins fan thought it was done. The Leafs had
Yeah.
so much momentum going back home, and I was at Game 6, and I had to watch that crap.
And that was such a close, hard fought series, and they just couldn't finish it off. And then it seemed like after that, 2020 was kind of obviously a weird year because you had the huge gap, you had the play-in round, and then them in Columbus had this oddly, well, not oddly for Columbus, but defensive, like extremely low scoring series that they couldn't find a way to win. And then I feel like this past year had to have maybe stung the most.
Oh, for sure.
Easily, just because of the way, like, not only was it the Habs, but to blow a 3-1 lead in a series against a team that you should handily beat. Like, you've got to come back from that with the same kind of mindset like the Lightning did after they got swept by Columbus in the first round in 2019. And everyone was just railing on the Lightning, and then they came back and they played with that edge and that chip on their shoulder, and they ripped through everybody in 2020, and they ripped through everybody again in the playoffs last year. And like, I feel like the Leafs need to play with that edge, that urgency, and that, like, we've got to come back from this and really shove it down everybody's throats this year.
Yeah, and I have barely played this card over the last few months, but it is also something that people sometimes want to ignore. But it obviously didn't help that Tavares was out for that whole series, basically. And Muzzin was missing in Game 6 and 7. Yeah. Like, people can say whatever they want. Jake Muzzin was a massive part of that team and a massive part of them being up 3-1 in the series in the first place.
Yep.
And in Game 5, he scored twice. And he literally was massive in that Game 5. And then obviously Galchenyuk's like atrocious giveaway in overtime. But then the fact that Muzzin was out for Game 6 and 7, no Muzzin, no Tavares. I have barely played that card, but obviously that sits in the back of my head that could it have been different with Muzzin and Tavares in the lineup? Yeah. I mean, there's a good chance it probably would have been different.
Definitely. Yeah. I think Muzzin's one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL. He is a lot better than people realize.
100%.
All right, man. Well, it's great to talk Leafs with you. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's great to hear a Leafs fan's perspective on this team and where they're at, everything that's happened over the past few years and whatnot, and what to look forward to going into this year. Because obviously, as we've talked about, this is a monster year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it really could be the last chance for this group to put some sort of run together, or we could see some major changes if they're not able to do it. So I really, really appreciate you coming on, man. And it's great to talk to you as always.
Hey, thanks, man. And I'm sure for both our channels, we'll be really busy, but maybe we'll get a couple more collabs in. But yeah, for the Leafs this year, as I said, I think for me, maybe you had to have a little bit of a different mindset, but I think especially with Riley on his last year, this has been my guy. And like, I definitely want to see it through this year, but man, it's definitely like a scary thought to go through another full year, especially an 82 game season, just to see the same thing over again, but we'll see what happens. So thanks, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Everyone, this is John from Hot Take Hockey, my favorite hockey YouTube channel. And John, do you have anything big coming up, or getting ready to stream some games this season?
Yeah.
What's going on with your channel?
Yeah, just going to be streaming a lot. I think, you kind of pointed it out on Twitter. It's great to collab with a lot of people. So I'm going to try to collab with different people, different fans. And I just think overall going to be doing a lot of, especially with being done school, I'm going to be doing a lot of streams and content just balanced now. So a lot of streams every week, a lot of content, just nothing specific, but I'll be getting my predictions out there and just be doing some crazy stuff every day. Awesome to hear. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Hot Take Hockey, the best hockey channel on YouTube, my personal favorite, and has been for a few years now. So that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this Leafs conversation. And obviously, we're going to have a lot more content coming your way here on my channel, as well as streams will be starting up with the beginning of the preseason and the season coming. And I'll be finishing up season preview videos for the rest of the teams that I haven't done yet as well. So a lot of great stuff coming your way. Thank you guys so much, and talk to you soon. Thank you.